joining us today for another episode of What's Your Why Wednesday. Today, I am here with the incredible Brie Crooks. She is a mortgage consultant at First Priority Mortgage. Brie, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, most of us came into this amazing industry by accident, but we stay in the industry because it's tied to our personal and professional why. Now, Brie, we would love to hear, what is your why?
Thank you so much for having me. I have been ecstatic for this ever since seeing you at the NAMA Connect. It's been wonderful. I had to think on this for a minute, and then it just kind of came to me very easily because this has just been me throughout. So when I entered the finance industry about 2010, 2011 timeframe, I started as a teller in a bank. And my grandmother happened to be the head of resource recovery in that bank. So I would spend my lunch breaks with her. I'd go up and eat with her, and I would listen to her having conversations with people who, were either going through foreclosure or, on the brink of it. And, some for good reason, some for not. It's disheartening to hear. And so once I continued to progress and found myself on the mortgage side, I really made it my mission to educate people and, to be able to help them not only get into their home, but make sure they knew what they needed to stay in their home. And so it's just been, a wonderful experience for me to continue that with every deal.
Wow. So you took tying in what your grandmother was doing, listening and paying attention to the stories that she shared or the stories that you heard, and then realizing, like all of us, so everyone hear this carefully, taking that information and doing something with it, actually applying it to make it better for others. Because I think, and Brie, that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is that I always hope that people realize what each of us does on a daily basis has a monumental impact on others, whether it's the first-time home buyer, whether it's the consolidation of debt, whether it's working with someone to build up their credit, to be able to do something in the future. And that's where that education and taking that information and applying it to make that change is amazing. I love that story. And I am fascinated that no matter how many times I've asked the question about coming into the industry, it's always some unique story. Like everyone has this strange way that they came in, and thank you so much for that. And that actually leads me to the second question. Perfect setup for that. So Brie, I'm sure you've had so many different families that you have helped and so many stories that have impacted your heart. We would love to hear one of them. Give us one that really affected you, that's kind of at that lasting moment when you realize how big that impact is that you have on the world.
So, oh gosh, one story, that's hard. Having one is hard. So what I can say, and I do have someone that comes to mind in this, but what I can say is, it's a lot of the little ones that really just kind of make you feel whole and make you feel like you're making that impact. And for me personally, like I said, I love the educational side. So my favorite stories, and one in particular is, those people that call me that don't necessarily qualify upon that initial call, whether it be that they just don't have enough income or their credit isn't quite perfect or whatever the scenario is. And we work together. We come up with a game plan on what to do over the next 1 to 6 to 12 months, whatever duration of time it is. We come up with how do we get from A to B? And, my favorite stories are, when we touch base again 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, whatever it is, and they've done what we have come up with for their game plan, and now they qualify. And I have a client that it is a single mom. And, she had a few children and she was just trying to make it on her own. And for her specifically, it was that scenario that the first phone call, she didn't make it. And I said, okay, here's what we need to do. And here's what we need to tackle. And I think it was not even 2 months later, she called me and she said, okay, I did what you said. I think we're there. And we were able to come up with a solution for her. And then pairing her with a wonderful agent, we got her into a home. And it was one of those people that, when you see the pictures, that the agents take with their sold sign and they have their keys, like it's so heartwarming because you got to partake in that.
Wow. And you just made generational wealth, because it's not just her, it's now her children. That, I always say this, that when you grow up in a family where you've owned a home, it's just common practice that you picture yourself owning a home as a child, right? So it's one of those things that you didn't just affect that generation, you changed the generation behind, because now they will think like that, and they will get that education, and they will reach out to be able to say, okay, what do I need to do now? How do I prepare myself? And that changes the whole entire landscape. Now, I do want to go back to one thing that you said, because, here we are, we're, once again, another change in the marketplace. And, most originators out there are, trying to come up with all kinds of ways to reinvent the wheel. There is no reinventing, right? A lot of it is back to basics. A lot of it is just the same thing that we know we need to do, but sometimes we forget to do it. So I'd love to hear from you what you just said. Okay, maybe this family or this individual wasn't ready now, but then we put them on a course, so we provided that education. But so many times what I see is a follow through doesn't happen. Or the, coming back and checking in and keeping them on that path. So I'd love to hear from your past experience. Give a few tips or share a little bit of how you keep that connection and how you actually keep them on that course. Or if they get off course, how do you get them back on?
Getting them back on there. So, once I connect with you, you're in my calendar. That's that. It's whether we're following up because we have something in process and we have to update an approval, whether it is something that we don't have in process because you have a task. So depending on what that game plan is, depends on my follow-up. And I don't typically leave it to them. I usually put them in my book to say, okay, given XYZ plan, like you have to pay down 2 credit cards and then we got to give it a month to cycle. Okay, I'm going to touch base with you in 2 months, or if you can do it tomorrow, I'm going to touch base with you in about 31 days. I set it based on that. And, I feel like, especially in that particular mother's scenario, she reached out to me because she was so excited that she did what we needed to get done. And for her specifically, she had a 3-month follow-up. And like I said, I don't even know if we made it to 2 months because she did what she needed to and had it settled. But it's really like following up is key on those clients and making sure that you have not only just a transaction or a report of what you're doing in your transaction, but you work on building the relationship with that client, because you want them to feel excited to call you, or you want them to want to touch base with you. And, so I take that time to connect with them. And like I said, you're in my calendar. I'm going to follow up with you, whether I think you're on the path or not. We're going to talk in, 30, 60, 90 days to say, okay, where are we at? And if we have to readjust, then it's what did we do wrong? And then what do we need to correct to do this again? And, we just kind of have that vicious cycle. And there are people that, do routinely kind of fall off the wagon a little bit. And, eventually comes that time where they say, okay, listen, I'll reach out to you in the spring, or I'll reach out to you in a year's time. And I leave them to that. But those that, show me that they want that dream and they have that ambition to get into that house, I'm not going to let go of them.
I love that. And a lot of things, as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking to myself, so many times we say, it's not a transaction. It is personal, it is a relationship, but those aren't just words. It really is. I mean, the beauty of our industry is that each story is unique. It's not the same. You may be working with one family that has one thing that they have to take care of, and then another family has something else. And it is that personal relationship and guiding them through. And, so many times I tell a story about whenever I'm traveling, I love speaking to Uber drivers. Like that is like a thing for me. Like I love having conversations with Uber drivers because I'm always amazed at how many questions they have once they know you're in the mortgage industry, right? Like, oh, is it a good time to buy? Is it a bad time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? Is, what are the interest rates doing? Like, what about, I've got this or I've got that. And when you were speaking about education, I think a lot about this, that we sometimes take it for granted what we do every day, that we think that everyone knows the answers to those things. So because you're so tied into education, how do you approach it, right? Like, how do you go about giving the education and kind of getting that messaging out to be able to help as many families as you can?
So when it comes to the clients that I talk to, I'm very blunt in the beginning. I tell them, listen, I'm going to need 15 minutes of your time up to like an hour of your time, because I like to go through this step by step, because I think it's important for you to know every piece of this. And so normally what I tell them is, if I start to go through something and you're already familiar with it, feel free to stop me. But I like to walk through the whole path, and then that way exactly what's going to come out of this, and what you need to know in regards to this. And sometimes they stop me, sometimes they don't. It depends on where they're at in their homeownership journeys. But at the end of the conversation, I also follow up with, listen, I know I just filled you with a lot of information. And, you have my personal cell phone number, whether it be them calling me or me calling them, you now have that number. Call me, text me, email me. I will repeat myself over and over again to make sure that you're comfortable with everything. And a lot of them, say thank you. And when they say thank you, it's like, not only are they actually acknowledging that we took the time, but that's how I know that they really soaked in what it is I'm saying to them, because they're grateful that they're getting this information, that you and I kind of take advantage of the fact that we do know it and a lot of others don't. So.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay, one final question. So you've been doing this. It's amazing how fast that time goes, right? You can't even believe that you've been doing this 11, 12 years, right? But very quickly, that time goes by. So I'd love to hear, now that you're a decade in or so, what advice would you give to someone that is newer to our industry? What's some of those lessons that you've learned now that you've gone through a couple of cycles during that time?
Yeah. So, like I said, I started as a teller in that bank and kind of worked my way, flipped over to lending. I've been in lending for a few years now. I absolutely love it. The biggest thing that I have in literally any piece of the roles that I've held is making sure that you remember that this is a relationship and not a transaction. Because, yes, this is what fuels our paychecks. Yes, everybody works to make money, to take care of their families. But the people that you help and the people that you connect with, you want them to remember you. You want them to want to come back to you. And so it's important to build a relationship with them, because, with everything that we do, it's always going to change. It's, the market changes, the environments change, but the relationships that you have with people, that's not going to change. That's something that will keep them calling you because they trust you. And that's something that keeps you reaching out to them, is because, you have that mutual relationship. And, I think that's the most important thing. I also think in regards to me trying to educate people, it's also important for me to remain educated. And, so one of the kind of mantras, if you will, that we have within my company is every day you win or learn. And, that is something that is, it's a win if they get into that house. It's a learning experience if something else happens along the way. And, having a good relationship helps you through that every time.
Absolutely. And that's what differentiates us. I mean, anyone can go, on their phone and pick up an interest rate. That's not what it's about. It's that relationship. It's that trusted advisor, like you said, right? Having that educated partner that's going to guide them through. And when we provide that and that trust and that service and that connection and relationship, as you just said, that's what makes it so that you're partners, you're in it together. I love it. Brie, you are amazing. Keep being fabulous. And I do want to mention before we went live, I was asking Brie how she's doing, and she was just saying that she is doing very well, and she came very close. What was the number? Tell me, what was the number, the percentage of your goal?
193%.
Amazing. That is absolutely incredible. Congratulations. Keep helping so many families, because you are making a difference in their lives. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.